Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to look at Sequence. This game is for 2 to 12 players, though it's best played with 2 or 3 players, or teams of 2 and 3. It has an age limit of 7 and up, with the average play time being between 10 and 20 minutes. This is a very simple game to play. Basically, you're tasked with getting 5 in a row. Each player will get colored tokens, or each team will get colored tokens, and they'll be trying to get 5 in a row on this playing grid here on this board. And to do that, players will play a card from their hand, and they'll put their colored tokens on the matching space on the board. And if you happen to get 5 in a row, that's called a sequence. And if you get so many sequences, and that'll change based on how many people are playing, but if you get so many, you'll end up winning the game. Very simple. So with that said, let's take a look at the components and see how the game is played. Now here's a quick snapshot of the components minus the box. You've got 3 sets of chips here, 1 green, 1 blue, 1 red. There are fewer red chips, and they are only used in a 3-player game or a game that utilizes teams of 3. If you're playing with a 2-player game or teams of 2, you'll want to stick with the green and blue chips. Now you've also got 2 decks of standard playing cards, jokers included, rubber band not included. The jokers unfortunately aren't mentioned anywhere in the rule book, but if you're creative, you can come up with some special variants or rules for them. For example, if you happen to leave jokers in, you can use them as wild cards, or you can give them special powers, whatever you feel like doing with those jokers. Or you can just take them out altogether, it's up to you. As for the board itself, it's a 10 by 10 grid, and as you can see, each space lists a particular card. Each card in the deck is listed twice somewhere on the board. So you've got like 2 King of Hearts, 2 King of Spades, 2 Ten of Clubs, and so on and so forth. The only card that is not featured on the board are your jacks, and in this game, they serve as special cards that can be used to do different things. Now you've also got these special spaces on the 4 corners. Think of them as your free space on a bingo card. Players can build off of them and try and get 5 in a row. If players happen to build off of them, they only need 4 chips to make 4 in a row. So let's just say blue here. This is just for example purposes. But let's say that blue had these chips here like so. And normally you would need 5 chips in a row. However, this space, again, is a bonus space, and this would count as a sequence. As I mentioned before, jacks have special powers when played, and what kind of power they have depends on whether or not they are a one-eyed jack or a 2-eyed jack. The one-eyed jacks allow players to remove a token from the board. So let's say it's blue's turn, and they happen to play a one-eyed jack. Blue could take this green token from the board if he so chooses to. If you happen to play a 2-eyed jack, this will serve as a wild card. And again, let's say it's green's turn this time, and green happens to play this 2-eyed jack. Green can put his token wherever he feels like it. 5 of clubs, for example, or 5 of diamonds. It doesn't matter, anywhere he wants to. With all of that in mind, let's quickly go over how the game is set up and how it's played. To set up the game, each player or each team will receive a bag of chips. And again, if you're playing with 2 players, you'll want to stick with the green and blue chips because the red bag has fewer chips in it. If you're playing with 3 players, however, or 3 teams, obviously you'll need the red bag. Then, after that, each player draws 1 card from the deck and just plays it face up to see who has the lowest value. Whoever has the lowest value becomes the dealer, and all of those cards are put back into the deck, and again, it's shuffled up. After that, each player will receive a certain number of cards, and that will depend on how many people are playing the game. In a 2-player game, for example, each player will receive a hand of 7 cards. A player's turn is pretty simple. At the start of a player's turn, you'll want to check to see if you have any dead cards, and you can go ahead and exchange one if you want to. A dead card is a card that you can't play because you've already got chips on that space on the board. Again, each card has 2 spaces on the board except for the jacks, so you'll want to check both spaces to see if there's already a chip there. Each space on the board can only have 1 chip. So let's say I were to look and say, hey, you know what? There are 2 Ten of Hearts spaces, but both of them have chips on it currently. Again, this is just for example. There's no chips on the board, obviously. But let's say this was a dead card, for example purposes. I could put this into my discard pile, and then draw 1 from the deck to add to my hand. After that, the player can go ahead and play a card from their hand. They'll take one card, let's say the two of spades, for example, puts it into their discard pile, takes a chip from their bag, and then chooses one of the two empty two of spades spaces. There's one here and one up here. Again, you can only have one chip per space, so if one is occupied, you'll have to choose the other one. Let's say blue decides to go here. At the end of the turn, he'll go ahead and draw one card to replace the one he's played. Let's quickly show you that again for green. Green goes ahead and looks at his hand to see what he has, and he's looking for dead cards. This whole dead card part of the turn is completely optional. You do not have to get rid of a dead card if you don't want to, though it would behoove you to do so. I mean, unless you're relatively sure that you can remove a chip from the board using a one-eyed jack. But anyway, let's just go ahead and say he has no dead cards to get rid of, so he moves on to the playing part. He'll go ahead and choose a card. Let's say he chooses the Ace of Hearts here. He'll put that into his discard pile, take a chip from his bag, and then choose one of the two Ace of Hearts spaces on the board. There's one here, one here. He'll decide to play one here. And then go ahead and draw a card from the deck to replace the one he's played. It's important to note that if you forget to do this, you're out of luck. You have to use less cards for the rest of the game. So don't forget. Now this will continue back and forth with players taking turns until sequences are formed. And again, the number of sequences you need to win the game will depend on how many people are playing. In a two-player game, for example, you're going to need a total of 2 sequences to win. In this case, blue has already created a sequence. Again, this is just example purposes, not actual gameplay. It's important to note that when you've created a sequence, you cannot use a one-eyed jack to remove a token from that sequence. So once you've created a sequence, you've locked it in. And there you have it, a quick look at sequence. I didn't cover all of the rules in the manual, but hopefully this will give you a nice general overview as far as how the game is played. The game is pretty modifiable too. Like I said with the jokers before, you can use them to do different things. For example, I've seen variants listed on Board Game Geek where some players will use the jokers to allow them to play off of the board, which is an interesting twist. You can also use them to put a token on top of another token so that both tokens use that particular space. You could potentially use a joker simply as a wild card. I guess you could use it for any sort of thing you want. So as long as you're creative and you're willing to go with it, more power to you. So with that said, check out my full review at www.dadsgamingaddiction.com. You can also click on the links in the below description. That'll take you there as well. If you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you can keep up to date on any new content I happen to publish. This is Vince. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.